Hey guys, Awesomemay here, and today we're going to be talking about ancient torture bad animated movies. I know them, you know them. Usually when I talk about these movies on my channel, the list usually includes just worst movies from a franchise or studio, like Cars 2, Wreck-It Ralph 2, The Emoji Movie, obviously, Secret Life of Pets. But these are the most common bad movies. These are the popular bad movies. These are the movies that are just easy to crap on because everyone has seen them and agreed on them being bad, and that's why videos about them get so many views. But even these movies don't come close to being the worst animated movies. Some people actually really like those films. Every time I say I don't care for Cars 2, a Cars 2 fandom awakens, and I have to deal with it every time. Today is different, however, because I'll be going even deeper into the barrel and watching the bad ones, the non-blockbuster ones, the bad animated movies that aren't made by billion-dollar studios. That's actually a lie. I will be reviewing some blockbuster animated movies that perform bad. I just need to pretend I'm a niche topic YouTuber. Let me have this. I'm talking Norm of the North, Foodfight, the Playmobil movie, Nut Job. Why does Nut Job have 14%? Did the critics not see the most fire end credits scene?
We're all a little nuts.
Movies being bad has gotten confusing in this day and age, with everyone trying desperately to have different opinions, that it makes it really hard to know if people like the movie ironically or unironically. Bad movies become such a meme in pop culture that it almost gets them away with being bad. Like, sure, Shark Tale is said to be terrible, but the internet loves it. The internet has embraced it. I just recently found out that people actually really like Hoodwinked. I have to admit it, I swear for the longest time I thought people were joking about liking Shrek because of how memed it was. I don't know why I thought this. I thought Shrek was good, but I did not think it was good enough to be so engraved in media and the internet. But it is, and that's what happens, and I love it. But anyways, today I'm going to be picking 10 or more of the lowest rated animated movies and giving my thoughts on them, explaining them, and as I go down the list, they will get more wacky and random, and the more I will either suffer or realize that this movie isn't actually that bad. There's a huge difference between a boring and hard to watch bad movie and a super entertaining but deep down you know it's bad movie, so we're going to figure out which one fits the categories, and you guys are going to sit back and maybe enjoy this. I don't know if this is a good idea. Also, disclaimer before we get into this, I am not saying movie scores are definite proof of a movie being bad. In fact, I'd say it's the opposite. Go to the theater or watch the movie and find out for yourself. It's so easy as an internet user to hate on something because everybody else is, or like something because everybody else is. And the main point of this video is to really find out if these scores are actually accurate and come up with my own opinions on them. There are so many movies that I love. Alvin and the Chipmunks that critics hate. I'd say on the down low, my taste is terrible. I'm not picky at all. I'm actually really starting to like Sing. I keep rewatching it. I don't know why. I'm only using the percentages of these reviews to find the quote-unquote worst animated movies without scouring the internet far and wide. And I genuinely want to take a dip into movies that don't look as good as others because they can offer some of the most unintentional, funniest scenes in movies. We need these bad animated movies so we can appreciate good movies and also just as a community laugh together at something. First, we got the Lego Movie ripoff, one of the fan favorites of the so bad it's memeable movie realm. However, this one is only memed by a select few, the rest just despise it. I started with the Playmobil movie because as the Lego Movie's biggest fan, this has come up as a topic in a lot of my videos, and I have to admit that I never sat down and actually watched it all the way through. And this isn't because I'm a fake hater who complains about things they haven't seen, although that is partially it, but also because I knew I wasn't going to like it, I wasn't going to pay attention, I wasn't gonna waste my time. But then this video came up on my ideas list and I decided that it was finally time to figure out if it's that bad of a movie. I can't even lie, I have a strange attraction to this animation style. I'm kind of an iPad kid when it comes to very marketable toy-looking animated characters, no matter how much I like to hate on them. Like, you can't deny that the animation in this movie is really fun to look at for some reason. If that's just me, shut up. If only this movie was entertaining, if only it had a good story, there could have been some saving. They should have embraced being a Lego ripoff and made a Playmobil Harry Potter movie. Wait, now that I think of it, Daniel Radcliffe is literally a voice in this movie. This movie starts off with like 10 minutes of live action, which I forgot happens, and it manages to make the lead actress, Anya Taylor-Joy, who is known for being a really good dramatic actor, seem like a Disney actor. If this was somebody's first time seeing her, they would think she has never acted in her life and that she wasn't in that movie where people eat people.
Mom and Dad, obviously I want to go to college. Education is the most important thing in the world, but after 12 years of school, think about how valuable it will be for me to actually experience the world.
They got her on set and told her to act as bad as she possibly could. Yeah, Anya, we know you're like really good at acting and all, but forget all of that. We need this movie to suck. And you can't make this up. Half of the opening animated scenes are just her grunting like 20 times. There's like 2 signs of dialogue, the rest is just her grunting in agony. They could not have emphasized reaction in this movie enough. Every 3 seconds a character is saying, "Whoa, huh? What the? What?" And they follow up her grunts and moans with this line.
I'm coming, hang on. Whoa!
Oh, I forgot that their parents died in the beginning of the movie. And you would think this would set up some emotional baggage these characters have to carry. And yes, sure, it makes the sister more grumpy and overprotective of her brother, but I feel like that whole plotline happens so quickly and it doesn't really have much of an impact to the rest of the movie at all. This doesn't change the movie that much other than being a ripoff of common backstory cliches like Frozen and Spider-Man. And even those worked with the lore of the characters. And they didn't even show the parents on screen before this, so who cares? They could have took it completely out or casted some of the coolest parents ever created in cinema and then killed them off and it would have been fine and I would have cared more. But no, they just had no other ideas. I think that's one of my biggest gripes that separates a good movie from a bad movie, and that is characters moving on so fast. I've just become so aware of characters that don't care at all when something bad happens and they move on instantly. The characters in this movie either overemphasize their reactions to things or don't react at all, and there's no in between. The Playmobil movie is one of those movies that was made just to be a movie. There's no inspiration or deep meaning to this movie. A studio just needed a movie out to say they have a movie out. How many times did I just say movie? You could make an animated movie cliche bingo, and this movie would have most of every box filled in. They even got Meghan Trainor to sing a song. Someone in charge of this movie told everybody to watch a few children's animated movies, study them, and then write this script. You got the cowboy scene literally confirming this is a Lego movie dupe. However, they make up for it with the most badass character in cinema, right behind Will Smith in Spies in Disguise. The voice acting from Daniel Radcliffe is impeccable, so in character that I did not recognize his voice until halfway through the movie. I'm also a sucker for anything that Daniel Radcliffe is in. It could be the worst movie ever and Daniel Radcliffe will still kill it. Daniel Radcliffe's acting in this movie is what I thought Anya Taylor-Joy's acting would be in this movie. They should have switched the roles around. He's almost as good as Dell, who has the chillest uncle aesthetic to him. The girl changes her outfit a couple times and I love the fits, but I also love that this guy wears the same Hawaiian weed shirt the entire film. He looks so out of place against these other characters and worlds. Next we got whatever this thing is. What the f- I'm sorry, but this is gonna be in the Hall of Fame for ugliest cartoon characters. Characters I find annoying, right up there with Mina and the orangutan thing from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I actually really like a lot of the other animal designs in this movie. They really stick to the toy theme and look, but in a way that makes it fun and appealing. And there's a lot of smart choices when it comes to the color. I would actually see myself having this toy on my desk. I can't deny that overall there's a lot of nice things to look at in this movie. Maybe I'm just not picky when it comes to visuals, or I can't tell the difference between good and bad visuals sometimes. But they do a good job with the textures in this movie. Definitely in the trees, in the volcano, in the wood. It's the bare minimum, but it could be worse. I don't want to talk about this movie any more than that. I'm gonna give the story a 3, the animation a 6. Wait, that would make it like a 9. Never mind. I'm gonna confirm this movie as bad for the story side, but it still has some high points with the animation. Hoodwinked is next on this list because it's another movie I talk about and haven't rewatched since I was in diapers, and I still hear good things about this movie, and I get confused. I thought it was regarded as bad. My theory is that it's one of those movies that has been just automatically classified as bad because it looks like it was made for a 2000s early PC game. It has that World of Warcraft Wizards 101 look to it that I think is weirdly really nice, and I think it's an aesthetic of its own. Suck it, critics who probably left a review 10 years ago and don't even care anymore. I'd be surprised how many people consider this in the top of good animated movies, and I needed to finally rewatch it to find out if that's true. First of all, I just remember loving this guy. He is the original animated cool guy. He's the original Lego Batman. Also, even though some of these scenes don't look as good as other animated movies, it surprisingly plays with effects and filters more than any other animated movie. Like, there's some interesting shots that I have not seen from bigger animated productions. Like, look at this blue tint that just really brings out Red's numbness, who is voiced by Anne Hathaway. Tom Kenny is in this movie. Patrick Warburton. This is like the Avengers for voice actors that you hear everywhere. I haven't seen this movie in decades, and I totally forgot what the plot was about, and after rewatching it, I feel like I have opened the box to another dimension, because I was non-cognitive enough to know how deep of a story this movie actually had. It's the Knives Out before Knives Out. It's a whole murder mystery with twists and turns, and it seamlessly transitions to flashbacks where I was confused like half the runtime because the main present scenes focus on the interrogation with all the characters. Amazing dialogue, I love them. I love how the cops are pigs. This movie was before its time. But every so often, it will cut to the craziest flashback ever, and then I forget that there's flashbacks, and I'm just sitting there questioning what's happening. There are so many insane filler parts in this movie that genuinely outshine all of the other stuff. Usually it's the other way around. We have a side plot where Granny is a skiing champion. She is moving those hips, she is flying through mid-air, hair completely unharmed. She is battling the ugliest Sigma man I have ever seen. Speaking of Granny, she also has a mask of herself in her room, so that was kind of weird. I missed a scene, so I thought that the wolf made a face replica to trick Red Riding Hood, but they don't show him making it, so then I realized that he just found this. The lumberjack is of course lumberjacking. I've never seen someone so enthused and into lumberjacking. I think he's gone insane from it. This guy is only involved because he fell down a cliff and flew into a woman's house. Honestly, justice for this man. Imagine going flying into sheer glass and then immediately getting questioned by the police for an unrelated crime. The timing of that. Free my lumberjack. I also hate this scene specifically because they insert the clip 10 times in the entire runtime. And I guess I was watching a bad copy because the sound effect they chose actually ruined my life. Upon further watching, I don't hate the animation in this movie as much as I thought I would. I also think it's hard to fault this movie because it was made in the early 2000s when animated movies didn't look as good as they do now, and people tend to forget that once a movie comes out, it can't be changed. The bad animated movie is stuck like that. It's gonna look like that for the rest of time. Except for, of course, Disney and Pixar, who are re-rendering their movies to be higher quality now. But what I'm saying is maybe this movie looked fine and normal in 2006, but of course it looks unfinished and wonky now. And compare this movie's budget to other movies at the time like Finding Nemo, Shrek, Happy Feet. Also, if Hoodwinked did look good, nobody would care about it or be talking about it to this day. The animation is so funny that it makes this movie stand out, makes it so memeable. The yodeling scene would not be as hilarious as it is if the goat was the pinnacle of CGI. I would not enjoy the Schnitzel song as much if the kids didn't all look the exact same, staring into your soul, probably planning on working together to bury you alive. The rest of the movie, I would say, isn't as interesting as all the side missions because then it goes too far with the side mission and introduces the most boring characters to be the plot twist villains, and it sucks so bad. If it was the Granny or maybe even a setup by Red Riding Hood to fake some crazy attention ordeal, I would give this movie a 10 out of 10. It would be above every mystery film in the genre. But no, we need this stupid Dr. Doofenshmirtz type lab with this ugly bunny that has no interesting personality traits. This was also when I started losing a lot of my focus and attention span, so maybe it was actually a really good section and I missed it. But either way, I'm putting this movie in not as bad. The comedy in this movie is really good. I laughed quite a bit at times. I did not laugh once watching the Playmobil movie. Next on the list is my favorite one so far that I get to review, and that is the classic Shark Tale. I wasn't originally gonna add this movie into the list because I want these movies to be a tiny bit underground and deeper in the lore than, of course, a big movie like this. But I don't remember if I ever ended up actually watching this movie. I was more of a Lorax and Horton Hears a Who kid, but I've always wanted to find out if Shark Tale is that bad because I thought people actually liked this movie. I thought this movie was on the same level of like Happy Feet and Surf's Up, like an over the hedge type deal where you think it's bad because of the fully stacked celebrity cast, but it still has some nice writing and emotional scenes. But then Shafrillas made his video and I realized people don't like this movie at all, unironically, and I need to find out why. Watching the first 10 minutes, I did have a seeking suspicion of the problem with this movie off the bat, and that is the fact that so much happens and there is no focus on anything, and it starts to build a backstory with a character owing money to a manager, and that's cool and all, but so much random crap is thrown in that it doesn't seem like the movie yet knows what it's even trying to do. And I was sitting there waiting to find out why the movie is called Shark Tale specifically, if the core theming is on fish. Keep in mind, this movie has 7 writers and 3 directors. For comparison, a Pixar masterpiece like Coco was written by 2 people. Did they swap out writers every other scene? Is that why this movie feels so random? Granted, I think I was more entertained by the random moments than anything else in this movie. Will Smith plays the most annoying character this movie could focus on. This is a grown adult, stop dancing and get to your job. The world doesn't revolve around you. I think this movie did something a lot different than most animated animal movies, and that is that they actually explore how animals would act if they had a society similar to us. There's schools, there's jobs, there's crime, there's rich and poor, and that's a big concept I like that they took the leap to. I feel like other animated movies at the time did this with animals, but I think this movie does it the most. The backgrounds are the barest thing ever. They bring me back to The Sims or like modern hotels in GTA. It's just an empty room with lava lamps and big glass. It looks like Roblox. Visually, the characters are ugly, but there's so many of them that at least they took the time to do all of this. I don't know why I'm defending this movie so hard. Angie is a queen though. She is the best character design in cinema. I love her. I did not know Jack Black was in this movie. I didn't recognize his voice at first. This man is in Ice Age and Shark Tale, and both times I had no clue until halfway through the movie, but he kills it as always. This movie does actually touch up on some deeper moments and ideas. I have never seen a more emotional scene in cinema than this shark's devastating cry. The main moral this movie tries to speak on is the fact that Oscar wants so badly to be up there with the quote-unquote big dogs and live a lavish life, where he's not seen as a loser, but in doing so he completely disregards the important people that care for him, no matter who he is and his status. And it does this quite a few times really well, but it also takes a big 180 where I think it kind of forgets this topic. Like, sure, Oscar ends up realizing his love for Angie in the end, but he still also reverts back to being an attention seeker during this anyway, so I don't think he learned anything at all. Yes, in the end, he ends up honoring his dad, that's awesome, and not giving into the idea of whale washing being a lame loser job, but he still tries to get fame off of this, so it erases all of that. I think the shark Lenny who pretended for Oscar during his shark slaying fiasco deserves more love. This man was gaslighted into pretending to be weak and beaten up for thousands of fish. I'm telling you, this shark was giving his best acting job, and all Oscar did was roll his eyes. He's so ungrateful, and he never learns in this movie. However, they did give Lenny his spotlight by giving him timeless representation. He is the reason we have drag queens. That's a joke, but it was awesome. I love Robert De Niro's voice. And I also do like that they did the classic bad girl gets karma scene. However, personally, I don't think this fish did that much wrong in the movie. Like, she didn't trick him or anything. She was just a cloud-chasing fish. That was her worst crime, and she was self-aware about it. I should touch up on the music a lot more before I finish this. I did find myself jamming to the music. This movie is the pop music of animated movies, and I'm not mad about it. It at least embraces how on the nose and how many celebs it has in it, and it doesn't sugarcoat this. We have a Justin Timberlake banger. We have a Missy Elliott fish. I also forgot to mention, because I was so caught up in Oscar being selfish, he also does the classic "he's right behind me" line, which has become such a meme I had to replay it a couple times. And that's basically all I have to say. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I was gonna hate it. I'm gonna put it in the middle, because it doesn't have a plot like Hoodwinked, but it's more entertaining than the Playmobil movie. Next on the list is Arctic Dogs, a Netflix animated movie that goes in the genre of I have to be so bored to stumble on it and watch it. This is the type of a movie a grandma would pick out because she has no idea what is a good animated movie. In similar fashion to the rest of these movies, we have a movie that features so many celebrities but sucks at. I don't have a huge problem with celebrity voice actors, but I feel like some of the times they make more sense than other times. Seth MacFarlane as the mouse in Sing is the best person to bring in for a monotoned comedy role like that, and Illumination killed it with that choice. Actually, now that I think of it, Illumination has the best record of this. Steve Carell as Gru, Danny DeVito in The Lorax, Jack Black as Bowser, Trey Parker as Brad, all actors they brought in that actually separated themselves from their past performances and tried. I also think that all of those guys just have a bit of that quirky, likable dad feel that you can't really blame them for their silly voice acting. You need a silly guy for a silly role. I see no reason Arctic Dogs needed Heidi Klum. Jeremy Renner kind of makes sense, but to me he's one of those celebrities that you pick when you need a celebrity and you don't have a reason behind it or a specific person. I'm sorry to Jeremy Renner fans. Before I get into my actual review of the 2019 hit Arctic Dogs, I do want to comment on how much of a clickbait gaslight this concept art is. They could have just showed this drawing on screen for the entire length and it would have gotten a higher rating. They did not try at all with the character designs in this movie. They really just made a quick 3D render of an Arctic fox and called it a day. Even Smallfoot was more creative. This movie also has a lot of writers for some reason. I don't know why bad movies end up having more writers than good movies. Maybe there's a science to it, or maybe they just need more people to make it intentionally bad. You're telling me this movie costs $50 million to make just for the characters to look like this. This movie follows a fox named Swifty. Very hard to hear that name. They say his name like 100 times in this movie, and each time it sounds even more funny. Swifty wants to be a delivery dog instead of a fox that packages things for the delivery dogs to deliver. Blah, blah, blah. And it's this whole underdog sob story about this guy not being good enough to follow his dreams, and due to the rules set up by society, they don't allow him to, so he grapples and tries to become a delivery fox. This would work a lot better if it was a Ratatouille situation where there's a big enough difference that it makes sense the rat is a underdog, but in this circumstance there's not much of a difference between these dogs and this fox for it to make sense. Yes, the dogs are absolute units compared to him, but they're literally just gliding down and delivering packages. I don't get why he needs to have this specific build for that. This is not the delivery Air Force. They could easily fix this by making his competition birds, an animal that has an advantage above him. He eventually does get the chance when the wolves get kidnapped by a villain this movie barely tries to introduce. He just shows up, looks the best in character design terms, and does his whole thing. This movie acts like you already know about him with its foreshadowing, which I'll get into, but they introduce the backstory so late you're already sick of this guy and his stupid looking birds. Why does every animated villain need a clone of one specific creature? Only Gru can do that. Like I was saying, this is when the fox gets the opportunity to become a delivery guy because instead of looking for these missing dogs that got kidnapped, they just need a quick replacement. And so he does it, and then we get hit with another cliche where he realizes it's not as easy as he thought. But I also think this movie just decided to make it hard for him out of nowhere because he loses all motivation that he had about delivering when he does actually deliver, and I don't think that would be how it would work. I think he would try harder. They just needed another 3 minutes to waste. I will give this movie credit before more negatives. It does have a very complex plot for looking boring, so that's a plus, and I do like the slice of life simple idea that is the whole delivering dreams of the fox Swifty. It isn't extremely on the nose. It doesn't feel like such a universal concept for an animated movie, so good job Arctic Dogs on that one thing. Let me go back to being a hater. A big part that makes this movie not work beyond just the very bad animation that is either fine to look at or actually unbearable. There's multiple scenes where the characters are literally glowing against the snow. You can't see them. Don't even get me started on the part where Swifty is naked. The other big issue is the timing. The timing in this movie is so awkward and bizarre, and it doesn't have to be. It's been a while since I've seen filler inserted into a movie that makes completely no sense. Like, sure, you got filler jokes in almost every movie, but at least they go with the plot. However, in this movie, characters will say things or things will happen that have no reasoning, and then the movie instantly moves on from it with no question. Like, what was the point of this? I guess it's a foreshadow, but it has no purpose in the specific scene. Nothing correlates for that to happen, and there's no backstory that explains who this guy is yet, so we don't need it now. Or other times the fox or another character will say a joke, but unlike most jokes in movies, the characters don't really bounce off of each other with these jokes. They just kind of state them and move on. The only joke I did find funny in this movie was when the bird asked why all the badgers had Italian accents, but of course, instead of having a cutaway after this joke, the characters just walk off screen in complete silence.
I hope someone figures out why all the beavers have Italian accents.
Ciao, bello!
The actual backstory of the villain I forgot to mention is the fact that he wants to build a delivery tube system that connects from across the areas and makes it more efficient, but it also has a deadly gas to it that would destroy the area. That being said, I don't understand why this guy was so mad. Was he upset that his idea wasn't accepted, or was he upset that he was not allowed to build a system that could destroy itself and kill everybody as well as his own self? Second of all, the reindeer, or whatever this girl's name is, says it was actually an amazing system. So couldn't she have just agreed to work on it with him and make it not dangerous and find an alternative? This guy does not need to be evil. There's no reason. And that's basically all my thoughts and everything that happens. There's like half an hour left of the movie to talk about, but there's no soul. There's no rooting. You got some other scenes that are playing out of an animated movie bingo. Characters don't believe the fox when he finds out what is happening behind the scenes. The fox then goes on this adventure to be the hero himself. This girl says she only came back to this town to be close to him, but she doesn't really do anything in the whole movie to make this feel like a real claim. I'm gonna put this movie in bad. It took me 3 days to actually finish this movie because I kept having to cleanse myself with better movies. Every 20 minutes of this movie would equal to one more Coco rewatch. For what it's worth, the animation could be a lot more hideous for a movie like this. We're moving on. The Nut Job is our 5th movie, and just judging by this name, you know it's gonna be the most insane 1 hour of your life. I genuinely don't remember this movie looking as ugly as it does. It's another animal movie because apparently all of these are, and these designs might even be more boring than Arctic dogs. This raccoon has 0 going for him. They did not do the voice Liam Neeson justice. Will Arnett is in this movie, Brendan Fraser, Maya Rudolph, the puppet guy. I feel bad for all of them. You can't have Liam Neeson in a project and not make the coolest, most badass character. The movie follows Surly, who has been stealing nuts from the rest of the animals in the city. Apparently the animals are just jealous that he doesn't starve. So you get this whole mission for them to stop him from ever getting another nut. And we also got this hero character named Grayson, who is insufferable. His only personality type is being obsessed with himself, but doing nothing to prove any reason for this. You expect him to have some sort of crazy character development, but no, he's legitimately like this for the whole movie. Anyways, they kick Surly out and banish him from the area, and this only helps him. He's a little sad for a while until he realizes that this was the best thing to ever happen to him because he finds a nut room, and Surly ends up actually helping the rest of the group by leading them to this nut room. Please don't clip any of this. Before the characters are able to go into this place, we have the best scene in the movie where Gangnam Style plays. Now, in most circumstances, you would think they would start a song that would then transition into the next scene, where it's this epic break-in with this song playing as they're doing it, but no, this was before animated movies could have a song in a scene and not dance to it. These characters pause everything they're doing to dance to Gangnam Style. It's so out of nowhere, it doesn't feel real. This movie came out when movie writers were in their 2010s phase, where animation writers were starting to forget how to actually write, but they were able to add the most cringeworthy scenes that they thought kids would eat up. I cannot picture an actual writer sitting down and writing this Gangnam Style scene into the script. It's like a little joke you would do on a Google Doc collaboration and then delete after the people see it, except this movie is written by actual screenwriters and they don't take it out. No animated movie of this time was able to come close to the fireworks scene in Madagascar. I find it really funny that they find this huge pile of nuts in a nut shop 20 minutes into this movie. Like, you have 1 hour and 20 minutes after this. What else could possibly happen? Just grab the nuts, get out, and end this movie. But nope, we get introduced to the ugliest video game Team Fortress 2 looking villains. My brain went completely out as soon as these guys came on screen. I had no idea for half of their scenes what they were doing. But I don't think it's my attention span's fault. There's really a non-existent plot to this movie that they stretch out for so long. I kind of turned on some Minecraft Bed Wars at this point just to keep my brain a little occupied watching this filth. I at least wanted to leave with some satisfaction, but I realized after this movie ended that that it was not a good idea to multitask because I completely zoned out of the movie, so I don't know what happened. From what I remember, the movie obviously forgets the mission of them getting nuts because then it turns into a heist action movie where the raccoon and the team are now stopping these villains from causing any further harm. It had some Finding Dory vibes to me. They eventually get these guys arrested and the animals are gifted by a miracle with a stream of nuts. This could not have worked better in their favor, and for the writers. Grayson dies. There's this emotional scene where they think Surly has died, and I did kind of pause and cry. For some reason, them making this specific character cry really worked for me. It was unexpected but needed from that character. I liked him. He sticked by Surly's side. They all really come to accept Surly as part of the pack, and he realizes life is better when you share instead of take, and I like that message. It's a simple but needed message for the kids, and for me, I'm quite greedy. But nothing will top what he says after this and the following Smash character reveal.
What is that? What is that?
I'm gonna go ahead and put this movie in bad just because it was so painful to sit through for the plot. Some of these movies have probably worse plots, but this one I kind of gave up on because it presents itself as if it's more complex than it should be, and I hated that, and I could not understand anything that was going on. It did not have to be so confusing. Why did we need these scary looking things? I think as a concept, it has that charm that a lot of these have in terms of memeability. I mean, I don't know if the movie knew it, but the name and the Gangnam Style, it makes this movie inevitable to standing the test against time, just for the ironic watchability. Any movie with Will Arnett is gonna have an impact. I love this guy. I love Batman. I loved hearing him in Reese's ads for 10 months straight last year. Next on this list is Ice Age Collision Course. I actually had originally planned on doing a full video on this franchise, but then I witnessed the Disney Plus special and decided to leave this trilogy alone. I feel like these movies and the Hotel Transylvania movies were force-fed to us so hard for no reason. Nobody was asking for them, the studio really just thought this was what they needed to put out. However, apparently this franchise is the third highest grossing animated movie franchise ever, so I guess I'm wrong and I can't blame them. And they made up for these films with Peanuts. But today I'm talking about the last one in the trilogy because this was really when everybody decided the series was never going to be saved. First, I just want to mention how nice this movie looks. Like, I'm about to bash it pretty hard, but I genuinely think there's so many interesting color choices in this movie. The purple lighting is very appealing. The later movies in this franchise also remind me of Hotel Transylvania, where you have a really poorly strung together plot, but the visual gags are super entertaining. It's just the fact that those gags are in a full-length movie and not a Looney Tunes type short. The movie starts off with, of course, the iconic Scrat doing way too much to get an acorn. In doing this, he finds a spaceship immersed in ice that is weirdly still working and accidentally takes off into space with him in it. And from here, while still trying to get the acorn, he causes chain reactions that cause a meteor to fall to Earth. And that's the plot that starts the rest of this movie. I don't know what is up with this guy. The first few movies it was funny, but now you would think he would stop pushing his luck and just eat the acorn. Meanwhile, the rest of the characters are playing hockey, enjoying their day. All the characters have really come to a resting stop in their relationships. There's no bad blood, they're all besties, except for Manny, he's got some issues. And we also have characters I don't remember. I completely forgot Manny and Ellie had a child named Peaches. She would be really cool, but her boyfriend Jesse is absolutely insufferable. Played by the guy from Pitch Perfect, this dude does nothing but follow the characters around, being annoying for the entire film. I hate the weasels so much. This movie would be so much higher than an 18% without them. Diego and his wife have barely any role to play in this movie. Diego has been reduced to a one-liner character. He just stands around and occasionally shouts whenever something bad happens. The balance of the characters is really a big reason these movies started going downhill. It feels like even the people behind this film were bored of this universe, so they just started throwing any ugly gag creature they could come up with. And this can work sometimes if all of the characters have similar amounts of time sporadically, and the characters use that time to connect with the audience and actually contribute to the plot. This movie does not do that, it just tosses them in and out willy-nilly. There's dinosaur birds that are the least threatening villains. There's this yoga llama whose whole joke is spitting. Duh. There's gender-bent Sid, aka Brooke, that I actually did really like. Except due to the bad balance of characters and time for them, the movie barely explores the chemistry between these two. The movie realizes this and quickly forces them together in the end. They also do the same with Diego and Shira. They just casually drop that they want to have children at the end and then don't question that storyline.
You know, we'd be great parents.
I know it sounds crazy, but the movie does actually explore some interesting and funny ideas, and I'm not going to ignore that, even if none of the ideas are utilized enough. The idea of them all teaming up together to revert an asteroid is kind of cool on paper. Some of the characters have actual feelings they share in this movie I like, such as Manny coming to terms with Peaches growing up and living her own life. And keep in mind, this was in 2016 before The Croods 2 tackled that same subject. There's this interesting scene where all the characters that were in a crystal asteroid thing become old after it gets partially destroyed, because apparently it made them stay young and youthful, and that was an unexpected concept for a generic movie like this. There's this other side plot where the dinosaurs that are trying to kill Buck for the fact that Buck stops them from getting eggs actually have some development that changes their mind, and they instead help to save the world and Buck, because they realize if they don't, they will also die, which I think is a nice way to give reason for a bad guy to switch up without it being too forced. It was predictable and obvious, but I liked it. Also, I liked them more because you got the voice actor from Encanto, and you got Nick Offerman, who I recognized off the bat. He can do no wrong. Okay, back to being negative. Buck Weasel is super boring in the movie, and I don't know why this franchise tried to push him. He has this ongoing joke where he takes care of a gourd like it's a real child, and the movie never lets it go. I think in some aspects, these movies not taking themselves seriously do offer a lot of fun characters. In this one, you got a Neil deGrasse Tyson Weasel for some reason. It kinda works though. I'm always a sucker for the silly, sassy character voiced by Wanda Sykes. The rest of the movie is as rushed as it can be. And there's a point in this movie where they really don't seem that desperate to save themselves from an asteroid, and you know the characters are gonna survive anyway. They're gonna pull one of those "the asteroid wasn't actually that big" jokes, and all the characters are gonna be like, "Oops, silly us, we did all that worrying for nothing, ha ha ha." That doesn't happen, but what we get is probably worse. We have a wedding dance sequence. What the fuck? I actually have no clue where I should put this movie. I feel like I have kind of a special place in my heart for Ice Age, but I don't know if I'm judging these movies on my own bias or in terms of actual quality, because there are obvious reasons that make this movie bad, but it's so expected from this franchise that you can't really be mad. I'm gonna put it in not as bad. I know that sounds crazy, but I was more familiar with this world than any of the other ones. There's something about these movies that still make them watchable, even if that's partially the stacked cast and Ray Romano. And unlike Arctic Dogs and Nutjob, it isn't boring bad, which is a huge separation. It's nowhere near Hoodwinked, but I would watch this movie over any of the other ones. Next on the list is 8 Crazy Nights, a movie I've always known the existence of just for the Curious George art style, but I have never thought about actually watching it until now. Apparently, Adam Sandler decided being on the worst live-action movies ever made list was not enough, and had to head over to animated movies to conquer that list. First of all, plot aside, this movie looks absolutely flawless. I just have to say it. It has the charm, only coming close to the Goofy movie in terms of visuals. It comes from the animators of The Iron Giant, which is so funny to think about them all flowing over to make this movie after that masterpiece. That's like going from Moana to Wreck-It Ralph 2. It also makes me sad because if this movie had an actual good story going for it that wasn't dumb, it would have been a classic. They fumbled so hard, because I actually really like Adam Sandler being the main character in this movie. I think his personality fits an animated world. Everything else though sucks, and I'm gonna get into that. Adam Sandler knows how to be in good movies. He knows how to make movies that actually have some heart. I don't care what anyone says, I cried to Big Daddy and Click unironically. But he also doesn't care that much, so we get movies like this. This movie follows all of the Adam Sandler specialties. You got jokes about fat people, because that's apparently hilarious to Adam Sandler. You have Rob Schneider doing a Chinese character, because of course. And by far the best from Adam Sandler is him doing a baby voice, because that's also really funny to him. He gets in the recording booth and giggles after every line. I really like this old man character because I'm a sucker for old wholesome man characters, until I realized it was Adam Sandler's voice and I could not hear it any other way, and it broke my liking of this character. He's only annoying now, but he makes up for this annoying voice by voicing Whitey's sister, which just completely erases my feelings on Adam Sandler's voice acting skills, because I did not know he had this in him. I did not know it was his voice until right this second. This This movie follows the main character Davy, whose main personality trait is being the worst human in the town, which is super relatable, but I also would beg to differ on how bad he is because he's really just edgy. He just talks like an angsty teenager. I didn't know that was such a crime. I feel like this type of guy is all you see nowadays, and his anger issues sparked from when his dad died, so I think other people's reactions to him being mean is more bizarre. They try to get him to change and they want to hear his story like a zoo animal, and then they play the victim when he gets upset. A mom he used to be friends with will randomly stare at him like, oh my god, is he gonna break? So I think Davy is the most normal character in this universe. That being said, he's not at all entirely in the right. He was doing way too much. It's been 20 years, dude, and you're gonna make old people cry over it? There are some things I really liked about this movie. For one, Davy being taken in by Whitey was really sweet, and there was a slow friendship starting there that I looked forward to. Some of the best gags where the humor isn't super in your face comes from these scenes. I love when animated movies just focus on the interactions between characters and nothing more. We get a Whitey original song, Technical Foul, which is so catchy when it shouldn't be. It itched every corner of my brain. That's a technical foul. The whole plot concept of the judge making Davy be a basketball referee for community service was great. It set up the story perfectly, and unlike these other bad animated movies, it's very straightforward and not confusing for no reason. I was finally able to comprehend what was going on in one of these bad movies. Extra points. However, there is a good chunk of the movie that forgets that this movie was ever about basketball, so that was funny. Also, I forgot to mention there's a scene where Davy puts Whitey into a porta potty and covers him in poop, and then gets a hose and freezes him, so he's now a poop popsicle, and then reindeer come over and lick it up and get him out. Okay, what the fuck? From this point forward, the movie slowly gets better. The movie starts to have an actual message behind it that you wouldn't expect from a movie that has a scene like this. If they had just got rid of all the gross stuff and focused heavily on this message they present, I think this movie would be good. Then again, it is Adam Sandler, so I don't think critics will ever let him free. When a ceremony dinner is held to honor basketball all-stars, Davy hesitantly makes it and watches through the window. This is at the point where he's kind of messed up again and again, but with a change of heart, he starts praying that Whitey gets awarded because even though he's supposedly a terrible guy, he notices all that Whitey has done for him. Adam Sandler has a history of making his character realize how much of a jerk he's been, and I think it's a really nice personal touch. Unfortunately, the award goes to some dude named Tom, and Whitey is reasonably upset, and Davy is even more upset because he feels bad for taking Whitey for granted, just as these people have. And he makes things right by showing everybody how much Whitey has worked for the town behind the scenes, how long Whitey has been doing little chores for everybody and helping people without any conditions or gratitude, and I loved it. It's a very wholesome ending. It's exactly what I wanted. Davy's character finally becomes likable. I'm gonna put this movie in not as bad, because it's really just a solid guilty pleasure experience. Sure, some of it's probably offensive, and I should not be this nice to it. There is so much that should just not have been on screen, but I could also see myself on a random night playing this movie in like an RV while camping. Very specific, but I feel like that would be a vibe. Nothing beats a bad movie and a road trip. Nothing is more nostalgic. Thank you, 8 Crazy Nights. Now we're getting into vile animated movie territory. The territory where I had to force myself to physically even turn the movie on. A movie that makes these so-called bad animated movies look like masterpieces, and that is Foodfight. I did not know this movie came out in 2012. I thought it maybe came out in 2001. 2012, though, really gives them no excuse. This is the first reason I theorized they made this as bad looking as possible, because how do you make a movie that looks like that without thinking, huh, this doesn't look anywhere near Finding Nemo or Kung Fu Panda. Even Rango came out before this movie. You got Charlie Sheen as the main dog character, which could not be more of a bottom of the barrel choice. That aside, I do really like this dog design. If I knew about this movie in October, I probably would have changed my costume. Also, I'm not complaining about this movie or any of these other movies specifically for having bad, terrible looking visuals, because having ugly visuals are not what only makes a movie bad, because there are still ways to make unappealing visuals work. For example, Jim Henson movies like The Dark Crystal had quite a few restraints with the puppets, and some of them even looked a bit strange or goofy, but they managed to still make a creative movie with meaning despite this. This movie, however, does not try to help itself visually. If a character is ugly, they go full out. If there's bad animation, they make it purposely noticeable, I think. And we also enter inappropriate territory where these movies feel illegal to watch. Every female character in this movie has to be sexy no matter what. Most of the characters are like weird hybrids. Most of them are animals. One of them is, I don't even know, I guess that's a weasel covered in grease. But then there's a character that's just a female girl and that's it. You're telling me this guy gets to be a cool dog human, but the plot twist female villain just gets a latex red suit. And to make matters worse, you got a character whose whole gimmick is catcalling. This movie takes place in a grocery store where you get a Toy Story type plot with this secret world happening in the aisles. Each aisle has a different environment and world, which is like the only good thing to come out of this movie. The main side plot this movie kind of focuses on is the relationship with this cat girl named Sunshine and her liking of Dex Dogtective. For the most part, it's kind of sweet until we cut to 6 months later where Sunshine has been missing and supposedly kidnapped. Dex, obviously being a detective, has been trying to piece together where she may have been. This plot is really so this movie has something to focus on because it's put to the side for the rest of the runtime, and they focus on much better things such as dance parties, ugly villains that mostly just throw liquid substances at you for some reason. One of the best lines in movie history comes at the end when Dex asks his team to cream them regarding war criminals, and that could not have been written better.
Cream them!
The villains have a sole purpose of taking over the grocery store for what I was able to understand when there wasn't a sponsored character wobbling through the screen. How did they get Mr. Clean in this movie? But the villains really have no point to be doing any of this. Nobody is really stopping them in this movie. They're doing a worse job taking over the store by announcing it to literally everyone they think is a threat. And just like Arctic dogs, they bring in a character every 5 minutes and do not care to explain why they're there. So you just have to pretend like they're necessary to this world. I did really like the lizard-looking guy for his Snape voice. We got this Gargamel-looking villain that's only scary trait is walking like he's never walked in his life. Get him off my screen. I feel so bad for Christopher Lloyd. I need to find whoever tricked him to record for this movie. Halfway through the movie, the mics they use to record this start sabotaging them and this movie even more by making them all sound distorted and in a microwave. Doing some research, I found out that this movie took about a decade to make with a $65 million budget for some reason. Also, that most of the brands in this movie are not actual sponsorships, they just threw them in because it worked. And they eventually caught the attention of an advertising watchdog who were more upset about them promoting childhood obesity than having Captain Crunch in the movie without permission, which is hilarious. The director of Foodfight is quoted to have said that this is the most complex digitally animated film ever undertaken, which is also hilarious. I will be putting this movie in bad, duh. It's hard to pick apart a movie like this even though I did because it feels like it was meant to be horrible. So can you really blame it if it is that way? I don't know. In loving memory of Robin Klein. I'm so sorry, Robin Klein, why did they do this to you? The 9th movie on this list is Escape from Planet Earth. So many alien animated movies came out in the 2000s that I thought this movie was Monsters vs. Aliens for almost 10 years, until I realized Seth Rogen was not in this movie, sadly. This movie came from the genius minds of Rainmaker, a studio I only know about because of the Ratchet & Clank movie. Animation-wise, that would probably be a negative, but the animation in this movie is not anywhere close to being as bad as I thought it would be. Sure, a lot of these movies tend to have an issue with keeping its animation quality throughout the film, but this movie at least tries. There's some good shading on the characters. The movie centers around this alien group dedicated to saving the world around them, and at the forefront of all this is two brothers who are having issues. The younger brother, Scorch, is so confident in himself that he completely ignores the protocols for the missions, and his older brother, Gary, is very controlling, and this doesn't clash well, and Gary quits. You have Brendan Fraser as the voice of the dumb comic relief brother. If I had a nickel for every time Brendan Fraser was in a bad animated movie, I'd have. This movie has the strongest opening yet out of all these movies. You got a great bit about Scorch saving baby aliens. You got a good joke sequence that's actually self-aware about product placement and uses it for humor. The ship narrator talks about Simon Cowell for a good 10 seconds, so that was also amazing. Also, probably the most clever part of this movie is that their next mission to go on is to go to a dark planet where no one has returned, and I speculated that it was some kind of dark universe. I thought that would be cool, but even better, it turns out that the dark planet is actually Earth. and I think the lead up to that is genius. The way they poke fun at Earth in this movie is really creative, and Scorch sees no problem with all of this and immediately heads to Earth that night. You would think after almost getting eaten alive you would take a break, but whatever. The problems this movie face start to reveal themselves pretty quickly when literally everything happens so fast. The brother is pronounced dead after getting attacked by some hazmat suit guys that look straight out of Monsters Inc., and Gary can't help but feel bad even though they're having issues. And so the child of the main character I haven't gotten into decides he wants to go save his uncle, but Gary doesn't allow it for safety reasons. But then the kid just goes by himself, and so they quickly find him, and Gary switches up so fast and is all like, "My son is right, we need to go save him actually," and then he dips. This all makes pretty good sense in the grand scheme of the movie, but it does not take any time to flesh out these moments, so it makes all of their reactions bizarre and quick. When Gary blasts off into space, it instantly cuts to his wife and son going to get help. There's no aftermath reaction from them that leads to this. The switch up from this alien that they try to get help from is also insane.
We'll make contact as soon as he lands.
No, you have to send someone after him.
I don't have to do anything. You don't give the orders around here.
When Gary gets to Earth, we get my favorite section in the entire movie at a gas station. Nothing could be more of an American Earth experience than having your first look into Earth being a gas station. You also get more dumb comic relief characters with these surfer dudes that are just hanging out there, whipping up a slushie for my friend Gare. I recognized the voice of this dude almost immediately. It was on the tip of my tongue until I realized that it's literally Frank Heffley from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Oh my god, instant cinema classic.
This is Hawk calling. I work at 7-Eleven near Area 51, and after years of waiting, it finally happened!
This scene does a really good job of making me really want a gas station slushie. I'm not a huge fan of the whole secret, obviously evil governor plot this movie introduces. I don't know why movies like this introduce an idea that allows for slice-of-life gags with outsider characters, but then ruin it by adding the most generic colonel, military, governor villain. Also, this scene really threw me off because I don't know what this is supposed to be. At first, I thought it was like magnifying cameras set specifically on Gary's eyes, but they don't sync with his eyes at all, so I just sat there trying to figure out what this is supposed to be. There's really not a whole lot for me to say about the middle chunk of this movie. Gary and Scorch both got trapped in a working house dedicated to serving the governor, who wants to destroy aliens and their planet, which is so sad that they just have to help him destroy their planets. I really like this slug-looking guy and his design. This would be me as an alien. I really enjoyed the Skylander-looking character voiced by the girl from Glee, but a lot of this just starts feeling like the rest of these movies. And by that I mean you gotta slug through it all because it feels like it goes nowhere. Oh wait, in Alien Jail we come to find out that everything we know and love has come from the aliens. Facebook, Apple, Google. We get a nice picture of John Lasseter, which just aged so well. I love the Easter eggs. As much as I can hate meta humor, I think it works in this movie well just because it kind of saves a lot of this. I don't see this movie being easy for the adults that have to sit with their children to watch it, so at least they throw in a caricature of Steve Jobs. What really makes this movie unbearable to sit through is the fact that once they get trapped on Earth, the rest of this movie is stuck in one boring location. I wanted to see more of the aliens learning and experiencing Earth. It would have made this movie way better and added more of a view into each character's personalities, because all the characters being stuck in this working chamber for the whole hour gives almost zero room for any action that separates them. I want to see an alien discover YouTube vloggers, that's all I want. We do get a Star Wars theme scene. They end up flying in a house that I guess is apparently a secret spaceship. I don't know how that got there. Unfortunately, the general has stolen Scorch's drip and just pulled up like Mechagodzilla, but they blow up his suit and send this sucker to death. In doing so, the two brothers have to accept that they are also going to fall to Earth too, and we get the first heartbreaking emotional scene in this movie. This is the first time I've cried positively in this whole experience. I'm not even joking, the emotional message this movie explores about loving your brother is done very well, and as someone with 3 brothers, it enlightened me. They survive, and then Scorch instantly gets married for some reason a couple days later. The movie wraps up with Shooting Star by Owl City, which instantly won me over. You can't have a nostalgic animated movie without an Owl City song. In conclusion, this movie does not come close to being as bad as any of the other movies. Sure, it does not do a good job on regulating who it's for, because it opens up feeling smart enough to be for some adults, But then they play really hard on the stupid characters and the general, which certified it as a kid's movie. But it's not as dreadful as it could have been, and for Owl City and Frank Heffley alone, I'm putting this in not as bad. Okay, oh my god, we finally hit the last movie in this list. We have to end this video with Norm of the North, the classic. One of the best meme movies ever made. This movie goes above any realm of Shrek or the B-movie. This is real raw material. I would not have any cares for this movie anymore if it wasn't for how funny the Twitter account is. I don't know if it's the official account because there's no way to tell, but oh my god, I think it would be hilarious if it was someone who had some help in this movie. To picture them fully embracing the satire potential of Norm of the North gives me hope for humanity and creatives. You got classic tweets such as Norm of the North has diabetes and Norm feet stink. Can we talk about how they're still making Norm of the North movies? Does Lionsgate have some bank account put aside solely for Norm of the North movies? This is another movie on this list that I do remember actually watching. I vaguely remember how this movie looked. After watching it now, I realized I must have not paid attention at all because I was not familiar with anything that happened in this movie upon rewatch. I don't even remember Norm ever leaving the Antarctic, and you're telling me half of this movie he spends not in Antarctica. So I'm wondering if I'm thinking of another movie or I just completely wiped out that he ever went to the United States and met a really gross villain that sounds like Bill Hader but is actually Ken Jeong.
Vera, he can stay in the model home. Gosh, I am brilliant.
Anyways, rant over, this movie follows a dancing polar bear who has the power of talking to humans. Don't ask why any of the other polar bears can't when they literally all speak English and talk just like Norm. But we're gonna ignore that because that's what this movie decided. This polar bear is special because he's voiced by Rob Schneider. If I had a nickel for every time Rob Schneider was... Okay, I'm gonna stop that joke. Norm's main job is basically a security guard for tourists. I don't know why there are tourists. I don't know why they're acting like this. Calm down. But instead of like guarding or eating them, Norm dances to give them some entertainment, but he always feels bad afterward and has to cope with being a dance animal. It's super emotional. He has to go to therapy for this. Eventually things get worse when they notice a house and a commercial being filmed in the proximity. A new company has landed and is set on making Antarctica a livable area for humans. And if they get support from humans themselves, they can commence with the first Antarctica town. I find the whole getting support from humans plot really weird in this movie. I don't know why they have to get human support specifically to put houses in this area. Are the supporters paying for it? I'm so confused. But this plot is just incredible. I would never expect such a deep message about humans ruining everything from a movie called Norm of the North. Norm sees this happening and tells the others, but they all laugh at him. He even pulls out a flamingo as proof and they still laugh at him. This is so sad. There is, however, one lady polar bear who is secretly cheering him on, who disappears right after this scene. I thought she was gonna be the second main protagonist the way they honed in on her, but I guess not. They're just gonna use her so they have an excuse for a dance wedding sequence in the end. We get our first human main character who is in charge of making Antarctica look as fun to live in as possible, and everybody she's working with is doing a terrible job, but this is slightly because Norm starts trolling them by sending these ugly little minion copycats to harass them. Norm's just a little troll. I don't know why these movies have to add little cute characters that just make the most annoying noises known to man. Why couldn't they have just talked like everyone else? Oh, I know, that's not adorable enough to the writers. They need to squeak and mumble to be silly. That's hilarious. Luckily, the human girl Vera is a pretty charming main character. She's kind of confusing because you can't really tell if she has ulterior motives for taking over Antarctica or if she's just really oblivious. It's like the mom from Phineas and Ferb where she still kind of participates, but you can tell she's not realizing the full picture. That's how most of this girl's personality feels. She acts like an NPC for a lot of this movie. However, she does have a daughter who makes it clear that she does not support this and gets ignored. I don't know if this is mean, but I found the daughter character really annoying. There are so many scenes with the daughter in this movie that should not exist. Every 10 minutes we have to cut to this girl saying a cool, awesome, smart fact, and Vera is like, oh my god, look at my little genius. Maybe this side plot was added by a writer who's also a mom who really wanted to give a Christmas gift to their daughter, but I rolled my eyes every time they cut to her.
Did you know that their Latin department is so good, they single-handedly resuscitated the language? It's no longer dead!
Well, it's a school for only the gifted and talented geniuses like you. It really is perfect. What's your major?
I'm gonna start freestyling my thoughts in the plot because I forgot half of the context 5 minutes after I finished the movie. So this is just gonna be my guesses of what happens. Jumping through this movie is a fever dream. There's always something insane going on. Why does this guy have a gun? Oh, and both of the pop songs this movie decides to use are Say Geronimo and Shut Up and Dance, which is just so telling of the exact time this movie came out. It could not be more 2016 choices. It's even funnier because the songs do not fit the scenes at all. At least the Owl City song in Escape from Planet Earth went with the topic of the movie. Norm eventually comes up with a plan, which is to help the humans with their mission of getting fans to back them up. But he's only doing this because he hopes he can change the minds of humans when they end up liking so much about him. He does basically nothing to get the humans to like him. He just has plot armor. But this is a super backfiring plan, I feel. How are you gonna get humans really into loving Antarctica and liking you as a polar bear and then be like, that was all a joke, guys. Don't take over my land because you guys love me, okay? Like, that's too much of a switch up. They're just gonna end up being confused rather than siding with you. His presence does kind of work of getting him a job, and he's able to secure his spot as the mascot for the human mission. There's this running gag that it's so obvious that Norm is a real polar bear, but Vera and the villain guy both are oblivious to this fact, which kind of reminds me of Ruby Gillman trying to blend in with humans. Like, Ruby, you're literally blue. Norm, you do not look like the guy that's so obviously in a suit next to you. I cannot let the plot get away with this. How do they not know? Apparently, Ken Jeong's character has been hiding the grandfather of Norm, who's been missing from the Antarctic, in a secret warehouse of his. I think this is a really interesting idea they could have explored, but the movie also forgets that they set that up, just as they did with Norm's love interest, because he gets forgotten about until the very end. Norm even gets close to discovering him through a secret passageway, but I guess they gave up on that scene. Norm ends up befriending a guy in an Uber who I guess is the manager of Mr. Green, I think, but the guy ends up calling up Mr. Green and giving him the smackdown that I actually gasped at. It was such a good karma moment. Mr. Green then gets drowned by Norm in freezing cold waters. I'm just kidding. Then the ending takes a total new turn where these new villains come into the picture and it becomes an action movie. They're set on killing Norm for some reason, and because of this, Norm and Grandpa are sprinting through bridges. They're getting snatched up by a helicopter. The stupid little lemming freaks continue to spout nonsense the entire time. Norm and his grandpa end up flying into the ocean, but with their smarts, they survive and live another day, which is adorable. Thank you for letting them live, Lionsgate. I did not expect it. Norm's grandpa gives Norm the good talking to regarding his insecurities and makes Norm realize that being different from the rest of his pack is okay. And I think that's beautiful, and I think Norm deserves a beautiful life. And this movie gives it to him near the end. They know exactly what the audience wants to see from Norm. To be honest, although this movie is completely ugly, I was kind of immersed in what was going on. Unironically, I was rooting for Norm of the North from the very beginning, even when he was dancing for no reason. This movie adds a layer of emotion and personality to Norm that I appreciated, coming from a movie that really could have gotten away with being the worst movie ever. And yeah, sure, it very much still is, but at least what goes on isn't as unnecessary as a movie like Foodfight or Ratatouille. At the bare minimum, this movie has a story and goal that you can kind of understand without having to rewind every few minutes. I'm still gonna put this movie in bad because I do not want Lionsgate to have a reason to make another 10 of these movies. I think they need to give up. All I want from Norm of the North are fire tweets. And that was the final movie in this list. I have suffered enough. This video took so long. I knew before I did any new videos on anime movies or new movies in general, I needed to get this out of the way. I feel like it was the only video missing in my catalog when it comes to anime and movie reviews. And I've learned more that I am not picky at all when it comes to movies or media. I will really sit down and watch anything that is watchable. Even though I complained about a lot of these, there was portions of me that did actually get hooked and entertained a few times, and I did crack a few smirks. There's a part of me that misses when I had no concept of what was good and bad as a littler child, and just consumed the worst quality of movies with no second thought. With social media, it has made movies, definitely animated movies, face harsher conditions and expectations. People fight over what is good and bad based on scores from 40-year-old dudes. Everybody has kind of become a critic, like me, and that can be good and bad. In one way, we get to hear from people what makes something good and bad and put that into our own ideas and learn from that, but it also makes it hard to enjoy literally anything. even movies that sole purpose are just to be fun with no other reason, and I think that should be accepted and wanted. Then again, I'm not saying that's an excuse or that any of these movies are particularly good, but the point is to just open the doors to be surprised and not avoid things over the judgment that they might be bad. We've seen this happen so much recently with movies like Elemental, where everybody threw so much hate on this movie just to say they loved it after they saw it. So in conclusion, let's laugh about bad movies, but let's also feel okay watching something and being like, hey, that was fun. Not a perfect blockbuster smash hit, but it was entertaining. Okay, that's it. Stay awesome.